In vain I would then have turned from this scene, to darkened aisle or lofty dome, echoing with melodious praise. In the open air alone I found relief. Among nature's beauteous works, her God reassumed his attribute of benevolence, and again I could trust that he who built up the mountains, planted the forests, and poured out the rivers, would erect another state for lost humanity, where we might awaken again to our affections, our happiness, and our faith. Fortunately for me, those circumstances were of rare occurrence that obliged me to visit London, and my duties were confined to the rural district which our lofty castle overlooked. And here labour stood in the place of pastime, to occupy such of the country people as were sufficiently exempt from sorrow or disease. My endeavours were directed towards urging them to their usual attention to their crops, and to the acting as if pestilence did not exist. The mower's scythe was at times heard, yet the joyless haymakers, after they had listlessly turned the grass, forgot to cart it. The shepherd, when he had sheared a sheep, would let the wool lie to be scattered by the winds, deeming it useless to provide clothing for another winter. At times, however, the spirit of life was awakened by these employments. The sun, the refreshing breeze, the sweet smell of the hay, the rustling leaves and prattling rivulets brought repose to the agitated bosom, and bestowed a feeling akin to happiness on the apprehensive. Nor, strange to say, was the time without its pleasures. Young couples who had loved long and hopelessly suddenly found every impediment removed, and wealth pour in from the death of relatives. The very danger drew them closer. The immediate peril urged them to seize the immediate opportunity. Wildly and passionately they sought to know what delights existence afforded, before they yielded to death, and, snatching their pleasures with rough strife thorough the iron gates of life, they defied the conquering pestilence to destroy what had been, or to erase even from their death-bed thoughts the sentiment of happiness which had been theirs. One instance of this kind came immediately under our notice, where a high-born girl had in early youth given her heart to one of meaner extraction. He was a schoolfellow and friend of her brother's, and usually spent a part of the holidays at the mansion of the Duke her father. They had played together as children, been the confidants of each other's little secrets, mutual aids and consolers in difficulty and sorrow. Love had crept in, noiseless, terrorless at first, till each felt their life bound up in the other, and at the same time knew that they must part. Their extreme youth and the purity of their attachment made them yield with less resistance to the tyranny of circumstances. The father of the fair Juliet separated them, but not until the young lover had promised to remain absent only till he had rendered himself worthy of her, and she had vowed to preserve her virgin heart, his treasure, till he returned to claim and possess it. Plague came, threatening to destroy at once the aim of the ambitious and the hopes of love. Long the Duke of L derided the idea that there could be danger while he pursued his plans of cautious seclusion, and he so far succeeded that it was not till the second summer that the destroyer at one fell stroke overthrew his precautions, his security, and his life. Poor Juliet saw one by one father, mother, brothers, and sisters sicken and die. Most of the servants fled on the first appearance of disease. Those who remained were infected mortally. No neighbour or rustic ventured within the verge of contagion. By a strange fatality, Juliet alone escaped, and she to the last waited on her relatives and smoothed the pillow of death. The moment at length came when the last blow was given to the last of the house. The youthful survivor of her race sat alone among the dead. There was no living being near to soothe her, or withdraw her from this hideous company. With the declining heat of a September night, a whirlwind of storm, thunder, and hail rattled round the house, and with ghastly harmony sung the dirge of her family. She sat upon the ground, absorbed in wordless despair, when through the gusty wind and bickering rain, she thought she heard her name called. Whose could that familiar voice be? Not one of her relations, for they lay glaring on her with stony eyes. Again her name was syllabled, and she shuddered as she asked herself, am I becoming mad, or am I dying, that I hear the voices of the departed? A second thought passed, swift as an arrow, into her brain. She rushed to the window, and a flash of lightning shewed to her the expected vision, her lover in the shrubbery beneath, Joy lent her strength to descend the stairs, to open the door, and then she fainted in his supporting arms. 1,000 times she reproached herself, as with a crime, that she should revive to happiness with him. The natural clinging of the human mind to life and joy was in its full energy in her young heart. She gave herself impetuously up to the enchantment. They were married, and in their radiant features I saw incarnate for the last time the spirit of love, of rapturous sympathy, which once had been the life of the world. I envied them, but felt how impossible it was to imbibe the same feeling, now that years had multiplied my ties in the world. Above all, the anxious mother, my own beloved and drooping Idris, claimed my earnest care. I could not reproach the anxiety that never for a moment slept in her heart, but I exerted myself to distract her attention from too keen an observation of the truth of things, or the nearer and nearer approaches of disease, misery, and death, of the wild look of our attendants as intelligence of another and yet another death reached us, for to the last something new occurred that seemed to transcend in horror all that had gone before. Wretched beings crawled to die under our succouring roof. The inhabitants of the castle decreased daily, while the survivors huddled together in fear, and as in a famine-struck boat, the sport of the wild, interminable waves, each looked in the other's face, to guess on whom the death lot would next fall. All this I endeavoured to veil, so that it might least impress my Idris. Yet, as I have said, my courage survived even despair. I might be vanquished, but I would not yield. One day, it was the 9th of September, seemed devoted to every disaster, to every harrowing incident. Early in the day, I heard of the arrival of the aged grandmother of one of our servants at the castle. This old woman had reached her 100th year. Her skin was shriveled, her form was bent and lost in extreme decrepitude. But as still from year to year she continued in existence, outliving many younger and stronger, she began to feel as if she were to live forever. The plague came, and the inhabitants of her village died. Clinging with the dastard feeling of the aged to the remnant of her spent life, she had, on hearing that the pestilence had come into her neighbourhood, barred her door and closed her casement, refusing to communicate with any. She would wander out at night to get food, and returned home, pleased that she had met no one, that she was in no danger from the plague. As the earth became more desolate, her difficulty in acquiring sustenance increased. At first her son, who lived near, had humoured her by placing articles of food in her way. At last he died. But even though threatened by famine, her fear of the plague was paramount, and her greatest care was to avoid her fellow creatures. She grew weaker each day, and each day she had further to go. The night before she had reached Datchet, and, prowling about, had found a baker's shop open and deserted. Laden with spoil, she hastened to return, and lost her way. The night was windless, hot, and cloudy. Her load became too heavy for her, and one by one she threw away her loaves, still endeavouring to get along, though her hobbling fell into lameness, and her weakness at last into inability to move. She lay down among the tall corn and fell asleep. Deep in midnight she was awakened by a rustling near her. She would have started up, but her stiff joints refused to obey her will. A low moan close to her ear followed, and the rustling increased. She heard a smothered voice breathe out, "Water, water," several times, and then again a sigh heaved from the heart of the sufferer. The old woman shuddered. She contrived at length to sit upright, but her teeth chattered, and her knees knocked together. Close, very close, lay a half-naked figure, just discernible in the gloom, and the cry for water and the stifled moan were again uttered. Her motions at length attracted the attention of her unknown companion. Her hand was seized with a convulsive violence that made the grasp feel like iron, the fingers like the keen teeth of a trap. "At last you are come," were the words given forth, but this exertion was the last effort of the dying. The joints relaxed, the figure fell prostrate. One low moan, the last, marked the moment of death. Morning broke, and the old woman saw the corpse, marked with the fatal disease, close to her. Her wrist was livid with the hold loosened by death. She felt struck by the plague. Her aged frame was unable to bear her away with